Hi there. In the mid 90s, I was taking a train down to London and I got the Sunday papers to read on the way. And I think it was the Sunday Times. There was a serialized excerpt from a book, and I recognized that it was written by a woman who was very, very prominent in the practical pistol shooting world. And she wrote it under a pseudonym of Sarah Ford because she was serving in the Special Forces. And sometime later, the book was published, and it's this one, One Up, A Woman in Action with the SAS by Sarah Ford. Sarah, as she wants to be known, was brought up in the northeast of England, and she joined the Royal Navy as a Wren, working as a mechanic or ground crew on helicopters. And she wanted to do something rather more fulfilling, and so after seeing a notice asking for volunteers for special duties, she put a name forward, passed the interview and the initial physical screening, and was given her joining orders. At the time, she was based at Lympstone, the Royal Marines Commando Centre, and so she was able to train using the facilities there, the assault courses and so on, to try to get herself into peak fitness. Now, at the time, there was very, very little known about what was then called special duties, and people would volunteer for it without really the specifics of the job being known. But what was known, that the selection was physically arduous, so hence she decided to get as fit as possible. Her joining instructions sent her to a small railway station where she's picked up in a 4-tonner and taken to what was Camp 1, which is an isolated army establishment dating back to World War II, which they could run the selection program quite out of sight of most people and with no apparent connection to special forces. Immediately upon arrival, they are sworn by the DS, be stood for about 3/4 of an hour, run around, push-ups, etc. Then they go through the admin process, and at any time, beastings continue. Push-ups are the punishment for any infraction whatsoever. Now, Sarah makes the observation throughout the book that she faced quite a lot of misogynistic attitudes, and it's a fair comment because at the time the army was very misogynistic. There's no doubt about that at all. And particularly if you think about it, guys who were applying for special duties, the idea of women, because remember they didn't really know the specifics of the unit and how useful women would be, the idea of women training against them, alongside them, probably was a bit of an insult to their manhood. And the DS, their job was to make sure that only the most suitable recruits got through, and they would pick on anyone for anything. If you're an officer, if you wore glasses, if you're a bit slow on the uptake, or if you're a woman, you were apparently singled out, but all it was applying the selection criteria. But one thing I would say is, and the army was very, very anti-PC in that regard, so any women who did get through that process were really good. You knew that. An early test is the BFT, the Battle Fitness Test, and then it's a baseline for everyone. And amazingly, for people who are aspiring to special duties, some of the candidates fail that. the most basic test, which everyone in the army is supposed to be able to do at any time. Then another phase is a kit inspection, where everything you've brought is scrutinised, and they had been told in their warning orders to not bring anything that would identify them. They were all just operating as a number with no names, no unit insignia and so on. But many of them had giveaways, letters from home and bus tickets and postcards and photographs and things. And what it was to emphasise the importance of OPSEC and PERSEC, operational security and personal security, for the unit they were aspiring to. The intense physical beasting continues with the Army's dreaded stretcher runs and log runs. And alongside more task-specific tests, such as watching a very boring film after an arduous run when you're really feeling tired, and then answering numerous questions about the details in the film afterwards. It was all about testing people's ability to retain, recognise and absorb information. Camp 1, in her experience, finished with a march over the mountains. No doubt it was the Brecon Beacons, after which they were captured by an opposing force and subject to tactical questioning, resistance to interrogation training, the usual stress positions, and the big four: name, rank, serial number, date of birth. That finished, and the successful candidates found themselves that they were in the training area near Hereford, which was Camp 2. And that's where the more specific training for the unit began, in this very modern camp with really, really excellent facilities. So one of the first things they went through was pistol training, or weapons training. Pistol first, then the long guns, including the MP5K, and unarmed combat. Unarmed combat was emphasised because drawing a weapon was a giveaway to you being military, and if you could solve any problem using unarmed combat, then that was preferable. Driver training, tactical driving, navigation, and then the more specific training of foot and mobile surveillance, which was done in the local areas round the camp, with the DS acting as targets, and then intensive debriefs afterwards, which built up to give them the ability to be a surveillance operator in the most hostile territory. One of the things they did for the training was they had to carry their pistol, which at the time was the Browning. They were issued covert holsters, and they had to carry them at all times. And they were given 2 blank rounds, one in the chamber, one in the mag. And at any time, the instructors would ask to check that they were carrying one up the spout. And this was to accustom them to keeping the weapon covert, having a weapon, and also being able to handle it without negligent discharges. Sarah passes the final exercise at Camp 2, which was quite an intensive surveillance exercise involving other agencies, and they are briefed on the role of 14th Intelligence Company, or the DET as it is known, and then the specific DETs they're allocated to. At the time it was North DET, East DET and South DET. The Grapevine had put Sarah in some apprehension about Southdet because, firstly, it's more of a rural area than the other two, which operate in Londonderry and Belfast. So map reading was a big factor, and her map reading was a little bit weak. And the other thing was it was the home of the most misogynistic operators in the Det. But she had to make do, so they all fly over to Northern Ireland and to Southdet, and then they split off into the other debts. And she makes her entry into the bar. After orientation, the guys are asked who wants to partner up with her, and there's a lot of reluctance, again, misogynistic. But one guy called Jed volunteers. He's an experienced operator, and he sees the advantage of having a male-female signature. They have an appropriate vehicle, deck it out with a baby seat in the back and so on, and they're able to operate successfully. And one of the things that she talks about doing is parking the car, which is, it's got a video fit to angle to a target location, so they can do a capture of the comings and goings, and then do a walk through the estate as though she's going to visit a friend, and carrying a large bag of nappies to fit in very, very well with with what's going on the estate. And this is the kind of thing that the surveillance operators excel at doing. She does talk about several operations, including a couple that she wasn't actually involved in, but was present at the debriefs, the informal debriefs in the bar. One of the other sections at Southdet, 9SCT, was involved in. It took place in Belfast, where the two ops saw three guys robbing the bookmakers. They were carrying what appeared to be a subgun, so they took them on and killed all three of them. And as I say, there was quite a debrief in the bar. Other operations involve being forward mounted at various police or military bases for weeks on end, eating unhealthy food, but unable to go outside, being on standby, instantaneous call out for quick moves, ready to take up a task. And so there's a lot of boredom involved. Andy McNabb did a review of the book some time ago, and he had served in Northdet and then had returned to the regiment, and he was involved in one of these operations, these long-term operations, and he has a view which doesn't 100% confirm what Sarah Ford's saying, but I would imagine her view as a woman would probably be different from his. And he does take issue with on the cover of the book, saying, which is in action with the SAS, he differentiates the Det and the SAS, but that's a publisher's thing, and you don't really have a lot of control over what publishers put on the cover of your book. One of the things that she did was to really train with the pistol. They had a dedicated range at Southdet, and she cleaned it out and bought a load of new targets, bought herself an electronic timer, and started really working on her pistol shooting skills. And as I said at the beginning, she was a very, very serious competitor in the United Kingdom practical shooting world. In fact, she was without a doubt the top female competitor for many times, and was a better shot than many of the guys in the military, in special forces. She really specialised in it and had obviously a natural aptitude. And as I said, I do remember it from those times. And one incident happened at Bisley. After shooting at Bisley, there was a big social. It's an amazing place. I loved going down there. They had a big social place, and they had a place like the Dewdrop, which was the Royal Marines shooting club, the Artists, which was the Artist Rifles club, which was generally known as the Piss Artists, and everyone would congregate there and have a drink after the ranges closed. And there was a boy racer, pistol shooter, who made a snotty comment to Sarah, and she dropped him with a chin jab without spilling her pint. So she's quite a toughie and quite a character. After she did her tour with the Det, she eventually left the military and went into close protection, and she had a successful career there. The book is the first to be written by a female operator. It's not the only one. There is another one which I will review eventually. But it does give a very, very unique insight into a very, very special unit. And it certainly is well worth reading for anyone interested in special operations.